Now, when it comes to Kendrick Lamar, there's a very clear shift happening, and it feels like we're right at the beginning of something major. The conversation isn't just that Kendrick is back in the traditional sense, it's more accurate to say that he's preparing for another run, and this time it feels bigger than anything we've seen before. At the same time, Baby Keem is building momentum of his own, quietly setting things up behind the scenes, and together it feels like pieces are moving into place for something coordinated. What makes this even more interesting is how it contrasts with the narrative that was being pushed not too long ago, especially with Drake positioning himself as the center of the culture. Now it feels like that spotlight is shifting again, and if you're paying attention, you can see it happening in real time. Before getting deeper into all of this, it's worth recognizing that this moment feels like the payoff of a long build. Kendrick hasn't been overly visible recently, especially compared to the run he had over the last couple of years, but that silence doesn't come across as absence. It feels intentional. After a massive period that included huge performances, cultural moments, and a record breaking tour, stepping back isn't a sign of decline. It's the setup for the next phase. And while some critics or fans might try to spin that quiet period as him fading out or losing momentum, the reality is that Kendrick has always operated on timing. He doesn't flood the market, he re enters it when there's something meaningful to say or show. That's where the bigger picture starts to come into focus. Instead of reacting to the current state of rap, Kendrick seems to be thinking ahead, positioning himself for what comes next. While other artists are recycling formulas or trying to extend past eras, Kendrick is moving towards something new, something that expands beyond just music. And when you factor in Baby Keem and Dave Free, it becomes even clearer that this isn't just about one artist dropping an album, it's about a creative collective building something larger. The way they operate feels less like traditional rap promotion and more like a coordinated rollout across multiple lanes, blending music, visuals, and cultural storytelling. The biggest clue about where this is heading comes from their connection to a global stage. Everything seems to be aligning around a major international event, one that goes beyond music and into global culture. With Kendrick reportedly working closely with Adidas and with visual campaigns already being released through pgLang, it's clear that this isn't just a simple brand deal. The content being put out feels deliberate, layered, and cinematic. These aren't just ads, they're storytelling pieces that capture emotion, community, and identity, all tied into the spirit of the sport and the scale of the event itself. What stands out about these visuals is how intentional they feel. Each piece seems to carry subtle messages, hints, and themes that go beyond surface level promotion. On one hand, they work as marketing for Adidas and the upcoming tournament, but on another level, they feel like teasers for something bigger involving Kendrick himself. That dual purpose is very much in line with how Kendrick and his team have operated in the past. Nothing is ever just one thing. There's always a deeper layer, something that rewards attention and analysis. If you look back at Kendrick's recent work, especially collaborations like The Hillbillies with Baby Keem, you can start to see how long this may have been building. That track and its visuals included references to football culture, global influence, and even subtle nods to competition and dominance. At the time, it might have seemed like just another creative choice, but now it looks more like an early signal of where things were heading. Kendrick often plants seeds like that, ideas that only fully make sense once the larger picture is revealed. Beyond the music, Kendrick's personal interest in football also adds another layer of authenticity to all of this. He's been seen attending matches, engaging with the sport, and showing genuine enthusiasm for it over the years. That matters because it reinforces the idea that this partnership isn't forced. It aligns with his interests, his image, and his approach to creativity. Kendrick doesn't typically attach himself to things just for visibility or financial gain. There's usually a deeper connection, and that's part of why his moves tend to carry more weight. As more campaign videos and visuals continue to drop, fans have started picking apart every detail, looking for clues. One particular moment that sparked a lot of discussion involved a close-up shot featuring subtle branding and symbols, including references that some interpreted as pointing directly to Kendrick. Whether those details are intentional hints or simply part of the aesthetic, they've done exactly what they were supposed to do: get people talking, speculating, and paying attention. At the same time, there are other signs that something is brewing musically. Baby Keem has been more active, teasing new work and hinting at upcoming releases. Collaborators within their circle have also posted cryptic messages, suggesting that the creative process is far from finished. When you combine that with Kendrick's history of surprise drops and layered rollouts, it becomes hard to ignore the possibility that new music could be tied into this larger moment. Looking ahead, there are a few different directions this could go. One possibility is that Kendrick plays a major role in the musical side of the event, whether through performances, curated experiences, or even an official soundtrack. Another possibility is that his involvement leans more into creative direction, shaping the visual and cultural narrative surrounding the tournament rather than just performing within it. Given his track record, it wouldn't be surprising if it ends up being a combination of both. There's also the broader business angle to consider. Adidas has been searching for a defining cultural figure to help lead its next era, especially after previous partnerships shifted. With Kendrick's growing influence not just in music, but in fashion, film, and creative direction, he fits that role in a way that feels natural. If this collaboration continues to deepen, it could evolve into something much larger than a campaign, potentially even a long-term creative partnership that reshapes how the brand presents itself. When you step back and look at everything together, the timing, the silence, the partnerships, the visuals, and the subtle hints, it paints a picture of an artist who is carefully setting the stage for his next chapter. Kendrick isn't just returning to rap, he's expanding his presence across culture in a way that few artists manage to do. And whether this leads to new music, major performances, or something entirely unexpected, it feels like we're approaching a moment that could define the next phase of his career. So the real question now is not whether something is coming, but what form it's going to take. Will it be a full musical rollout tied into a global event, a series of performances that redefine what rap looks like on that stage, or something even more ambitious that blends multiple mediums together? Whatever it ends up being, all signs point to it being significant. And if history is any indication, it's going to be executed with a level of detail and intention that sets it apart. So what this really tells you is that whenever Kendrick Lamar decides to move, it's never random. Every step is calculated, every move is aligned with his values, his interests, and the overall vision he's building. That's why this whole situation actually fits perfectly with his image. It doesn't feel forced, it doesn't feel like a typical celebrity brand partnership. It feels like something that was always going to happen if you were paying attention closely enough. There's a pattern here, and the more you look at it, the clearer it becomes that this moment didn't just come out of nowhere. Whether this was something Kendrick envisioned years ago, or whether organizations like FIFA and Adidas approached him directly, or even if it's a mix of both, everything lines up in a way that just makes sense. When you take a step back and actually look at the bigger picture, it feels like all the pieces have been slowly coming together. And when you watch the work that Kendrick and his team have already started putting out around the World Cup, that idea becomes even more obvious. The content itself speaks volumes. The teasers, the visuals, the short films, they're not just high quality, they're intentional. You can tell that they're building something bigger than just a campaign. They're crafting a visual world, something that could actually define the tone and aesthetic of the tournament in certain ways. On the surface, yes, it promotes Adidas. It showcases the brand, the lifestyle, the energy around it. But if you look deeper, there's clearly more going on than just marketing. That's been the signature of Kendrick's creative circle, especially with Dave Free and the pgLang team. Nothing they do is ever just one-dimensional. There are always layers. To a casual viewer, this might just look like a clean, well-produced World Cup promo. But if you're tapped into the culture, if you've followed Kendrick's career, you know there's more beneath the surface. There are hints, messages, and subtle details that suggest this is building towards something much bigger. And that's exactly why fans are starting to get excited, because those hints are becoming harder to ignore. Especially with the latest visuals that have been dropping, there's been a noticeable increase in speculation. One particular clip has people really talking. A close-up shot of a car door with a key, a whistle, and several tags attached. At first glance, it might seem random, but when you start paying attention to the details, you notice the Adidas branding, the World Cup references, and then one specific detail that stood out to a lot of people: the name Dot. Now, for those who know, Dot is directly associated with Kendrick. So seeing that appear in this context immediately sparked conversation. Is it a coincidence? Is it a hidden message? Or is it a deliberate tease? Nobody can say for sure yet, but given Kendrick's track record, it's hard to believe it's meaningless. His team doesn't usually include details like that without a purpose. At the same time, the activity around him is starting to pick up. Baby Keem has been teasing new music, showing signs that he's ready to step back into the spotlight. Collaborators within their circle are posting cryptic messages as well, including references that echo the mindset of "the job isn't finished," something that immediately reminds people of the mentality associated with Kobe Bryant. When you see multiple people in the same creative circle moving like this, it doesn't feel accidental. It feels coordinated. And when you connect all of these dots, it becomes harder to ignore what might be coming. It's starting to look like Kendrick's involvement in the World Cup isn't just minor or behind the scenes. It could be something much bigger, something central to the entire experience. And if Baby Keem is involved as well, then you're potentially looking at a full creative takeover tied to one of the biggest global events possible. Of course, there are still questions about what form this will actually take. Some people believe it could be tied to performances, others think it might be more about creative direction, and some are expecting new music to be part of the rollout. But whatever it is, the scale is what stands out. This isn't just another appearance or collaboration. This is the kind of opportunity that can redefine how hip-hop interacts with global events. And it also adds an interesting layer when you think about Drake. There was a time when it seemed like he might be positioning himself for something like this, especially after the whole conversation around major performances like the Super Bowl. But now, with Kendrick clearly embedded in this World Cup ecosystem, it feels like that opportunity has shifted completely. And whether you find that ironic or just part of how the industry works, it definitely changes the narrative. When you look at what Kendrick brought to the Super Bowl stage, it's not surprising that major organizations would want him involved again on a global level. He represents more than just music. He represents storytelling, authenticity, and cultural impact. And those are exactly the kinds of qualities you want when you're trying to present something as massive as the World Cup to a global audience. There have also been rumors about how the World Cup might approach performances this time around. Instead of a single headliner, there's talk of a more collaborative, ensemble-style presentation. Names like Chris Martin have been mentioned in connection with curating that lineup, which adds another layer of intrigue. But even within that framework, Kendrick's role might not be as straightforward as just performing a set. Because when you think about locations like Los Angeles, where multiple matches are set to take place, it opens up another possibility. Instead of focusing only on the final or a traditional halftime show, Kendrick could be involved in creating a localized cultural experience, something that represents the city, the sound, and the identity of that region. And if that's the case, then having him lead that charge makes perfect sense. At the same time, this entire partnership with Adidas could be building towards something even bigger off the stage. The brand has been searching for a defining figure to help shape its next chapter, especially after major shifts in its previous partnerships. There were rumors about Travis Scott stepping into that role, and of course the legacy of Kanye West still looms large in that space. But Kendrick offers something different, something more grounded in artistic vision and long-term storytelling. And that's why it's not unrealistic to think that this could evolve into something like a signature line, or a deeper creative partnership that goes beyond campaigns and into product, design, and cultural influence. Especially when you consider how much Kendrick has already been expanding into other areas like fashion and film, working with brands like Shaneland, exploring projects outside of music. When you put everything together, what you're really seeing is an artist operating at a completely different level. Kendrick isn't just dropping songs. He's building ecosystems. He's connecting music, visuals, business, and culture into one cohesive vision. And that's why so many major players are lining up to work with him right now. So whether this leads to new music, major performances, a groundbreaking campaign, or something we haven't even considered yet, one thing is clear. This isn't random. It's structured, it's intentional, and it's building towards something that could have a real impact not just on hip-hop, but on global culture as a whole. When you really step back and look at everything that's happening here, it starts to feel like something much bigger is unfolding right in front of us. There's a genuine question now about whether all of this activity with Adidas is leading towards something even more significant, like Kendrick building his own line or having a direct creative imprint on a major fashion rollout. Whether that ends up being something spearheaded personally by him or something developed through his wider creative circle, including Project 3 or Dave Free, it's clear that this isn't just surface-level collaboration. There's intent behind it, And more importantly, there's direction. Adidas, as a brand, understands better than most just how powerful hip hop culture is when it comes to shaping trends and defining eras. This isn't new territory either. We've seen how artist partnerships can evolve into full blown empires. The Yeezy wave proved that, and even beyond that, there have been countless moments where music and fashion have collided to create something massive. So when you look at Kendrick stepping into this space at a time where Adidas is still trying to regain its footing and redefine its identity, it starts to make a lot more sense why this partnership feels different. It doesn't feel temporary, it feels foundational. And that's where things get interesting, because if you follow the trajectory of everything that's been building, it's not hard to imagine this evolving into something deeper than what we're currently seeing. There's a real possibility that Kendrick could become a central creative force for the brand moving forward, or at the very least, a major piece in whatever their next phase looks like. When a company is looking to regain momentum, they don't just pick anyone, they align with someone who represents authenticity, vision, and consistency. Kendrick checks all of those boxes, and then some. At the same time, when you zoom out and look at Kendrick's position overall, especially with everything tied to the World Cup and these larger global stages, it's becoming clearer why so many major players want to work with him. He's not just making music anymore, he's shaping experiences. He's blending storytelling, culture, and business in a way that very few artists have been able to do successfully. And that's why comparisons start to come up, because when you look at how he moves, there are elements of that mogul mindset that we've seen before at the highest levels. What really separates Kendrick, though, is how intentional everything feels. Nothing comes across as forced or rushed. Every move seems calculated, but not in a cynical way. It's more about alignment. He's not chasing relevance, he's defining it on his own terms. And that's why his presence keeps growing without feeling oversaturated. Even when he's quiet, there's still momentum building behind the scenes, and when things finally surface, they carry weight. If you think about the run he's been on, it's honestly kind of wild. From massive performances to record-breaking tours and now potentially being tied into one of the biggest global sporting events in the world, it's a level of consistency and scale that's hard to ignore. And if this trajectory continues, there are going to be conversations that a lot of people might not be ready for, because it challenges the way we usually define dominance in music and culture. There's also the business side of it, which can't be overlooked. The way Kendrick is navigating these partnerships shows a deep understanding of how to expand influence without diluting identity. That balance is incredibly hard to maintain, but he's doing it in a way that feels natural. Whether it's music, fashion, or broader creative direction, everything still feels like it comes from the same core vision. And honestly, that's why there's so much anticipation right now. It's not just about whether new music is coming or whether there's going to be a performance at the World Cup. It's about what all of this represents when you connect the dots. It feels like the setup for something bigger, something that could redefine not just his career, but the space around him as well. At the end of the day, that's what makes this moment so interesting. There are so many moving pieces, and while we don't have full confirmation on what everything is leading to, the pattern is there. The signals are there. And when you combine that with the track record he already has, it's hard not to feel like we're on the edge of something major. So now it really comes down to what you think. Is this all building toward new music? Are we looking at major performances tied to the World Cup? Or is this more about a long-term play with Adidas and a bigger shift into fashion and creative direction? There are a lot of possibilities, and honestly, that's part of what makes this so exciting right now. Either way, if you've made it this far, you're clearly tapped in, and there's definitely more to come. Make sure you stay locked in, because if even half of this speculation turns out to be true, we're about to witness something huge unfold in real time.